Good day, runners. This is Coach Peter Pem, and I'm on my second cup of coffee, which will be the limit for the day. One of my favorite and arguably most useful workshops is the one about how to determine reasonable goals for races between 5 kilometers and the marathon. In these workshops, I provide objective means to determine what might make sense given the runner's background and current state of training and capabilities with respect to interval workouts. Now, we all know that the need to manage expectations, right? You don't want that emotional breakdown after the race is over. I was sure I could break 2 hours for the half. I was sure. 2:15, that just sucks. Well, it's not uncommon for folks first getting into running to get inspired about a certain performance time, but without really appreciating what it will take. But that's understandable. I mean, why would they? Let me give you a great example, and this is a true story. About 15 years ago, I had a new client. We'll call him Bob. His real name was Gary, but to protect his identity, I'll call him Bob. So Bob was 35 years old and married, and guess by now still is, well, at least a 50-50 chance. And I recall he had at least one kid, maybe 2 kids. So at my first meeting with him, I find out about his medical background, which was clear, and his athletic background, which was also clear. I mean, this gent had done nothing athletics-wise through high school and in his 20s. He'd only just started about a month or two earlier when he got the bug to take up running. So I get to the last part of the interview, at which point I ask him, what his goals are. And he looks at me and is completely straight-faced, and he tells me that he would like to run a 4-minute mile. And then he adds, and I'm willing to work hard for it. This is serious. Now, folks, a 4-minute mile doesn't exactly fall into one's lap. In fact, for a long while, it was considered an impossible physical barrier, in the same way that the 2-hour marathon is now, which, by the way, I predicted a couple of decades ago will eventually be broken on the basis of known physiology. I'll probably talk about that another time. Anyway, it wasn't until 1954 before a member of our species, a man by the way, finally accomplished the sub-4-minute mile, and it was England's Roger Bannister who did it. It was such a big deal, and even in 2005 ESPN made a full-length movie about it for TV, which I had the pleasure of working on as an action coordinator. Anyway, when Bob told me his goal with his straight face, I put on my best Phil Ivey poker face, and I told him, hey, that's great, and I'm glad you're willing to work hard for it. But then the education process began, and I tell him, let's break this down, Bob. A 4-minute mile requires doing 4 laps of a quarter-mile track at 60 seconds per lap. Most humans can't come anywhere close to running 1 lap in 60 seconds. Most can't even come close to running half a lap, or about 200 meters in 30 seconds. And even if you could do a 60-second lap, you have to do 4 in a row without stopping. I think I was getting emotional at this point as I was breaking it down for Bob. So common sense will tell you that it's not good enough to be capable of a 60-second quarter. You're going to have to be a lot faster than that. And as a matter of fact, the minimum requirement is closer to 51 seconds, and even that's not guaranteeing you'll have the aerobic capacity to string 4 60-second quarters in a row without stopping for air or an ambulance. So the bottom line is this, no matter what time goal you have for any distance, there will be a prerequisite time capability for distances shorter than that event, and the prerequisite times are knowable in advance. As another example, a person wanting to run a 3-hour marathon could run 100 miles a week, but if they can't run about 38:45 for 10K, they still might not be able to break 3 hours for the marathon. That's it for now. Oh, Bob never did run a 4-minute mile.